Welcome to the yet another fabulous evening. It's Friday and welcome to a special edition of Jewelry Outlook webinar. Today we have with us a special guest, Mr. Ajoy Chawla. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Tanishq. As everyone knows, Tanishq is the jewelry division of Titan Company Limited. And Titan is the jewel in Tata Group's crown. Rightfully so, because more than 80% of the turnover of Titan is contributed by Tanishq. To introduce Ajoy, he is an engineer from Mumbai University, an MBA from the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Kolkata. He has also done advanced management program from Harvard Business School. He has had a long and distinguished career spanning 29 years at Titan. He has successfully executed assignments in sales, marketing, operations, and strategy, spanning across products ranging from watches, accessories, perfumes, Indian ethnic wear, and I'm very happy to welcome him. And since he is a new leader representing a market leader, there is a lot to learn. So without further ado, I would now request Ajoy Chawla to come on board. Welcome, Ajoy.
Hi, Anil. Thanks for all the kind words.
It's my pleasure.
Happy to be here, and good afternoon to people in the UK, and good evening to people in India and wherever else they are. So happy to meet up.
Yeah. So while I was going through your distinguished career at Tanishq, I find that this is your first assignment in jewelry. So you bring a fresh perspective and newcomer's approach to the jewelry business. I know that you and your team are extremely busy with the stores opening, and I really take this opportunity to thank you for accepting our invitation and willing to share your leadership mantra with all of us. So to begin with, as I always say, the best thing about you is you. It is a title of a best-selling book by Anupam Kher, and I believe in the credo. So to begin with, Ajoy, I would like to know more about you and your career journey at Titan. More particularly your aha moments and ouch moments. So at least share one such incident where you made a judgmental error, but you learned something and you built on that failure, and next time you were even more successful. So without further ado, now I would request to take over.
Thanks, Anil. I think there have been many exciting moments in Titan because I've spanned many categories, geographies, and functions. One of the interesting lessons I learned when I was, leading the Titan brand in the watches side for India and international, we were wanting to refresh the brand. We wanted to present a more contemporary imagery for the brand, etc. Now, when the marketing campaign and the entire marketing team came forward and said, hey, here's a fantastic opportunity to present a fresh face. I think it was a campaign with Katrina Kaif, and it was a lovely ad campaign which talked about a relationship between her mother and herself. And we had one or two other such ads. During that phase, there were two campaigns, or maybe, I think 2 or 3 campaigns, where the Titan marketing team, I was the business head that time, the Titan marketing team consciously said, along with the agency, let's drop the Titan tune, the Mozart symphony, which is now popularly known as the Titan tune. After some very limited discussions with only amongst a few of us, I said, okay, let's try it out. Let's see how it works. I didn't realize that later on when we were discussing it, it became a very important topic for consumers, many of our stakeholders, even within the company, all the people who had taken pride in building Titan. Somewhere, I think the identity of Titan got left out. The depth of the connect of that Mozart symphony with the Titan brand was connected. It was an expression of Titan itself. You know, even without saying Titan, when people hear that tune, they could say this is a campaign from Titan. And there's something familiar, something melodious, something classical, and something loved. And I realized that whenever we touch any brand, especially if it's an iconic brand, it's important that we understand what is the depth of its heritage, what is the link of its brand identity, and more importantly, does the marketer own the brand or does the customer own the brand? Because the customer is actually having the brand in her mind. A brand is an intangible asset, right? It's an intangible, abstract idea. So actually, the brand is more in the mind of the customer than we imagine. So if I have to change anything about it, I must have a tacit permission of the customer. If I have to change something which is or it has to be done very, very gradually. So I think it's a very beautiful lesson in brands and managing iconic brands. And that's something which I hope to keep in mind for the Tanishq brand as well, because this brand has built an iconic stature in the last 25 odd years that it's been there. And it celebrates relationships. It is celebrating trust. It is celebrating occasions and emotional occasions, which are very important in the hearts of, in the memory and the heart of consumers. It also has its fun moments, you know, so, but it's very important that all the important markers of identity and what has made Tanishq great should remain there. You know, even if there is tweaks, then it has to be done very, very carefully with a lot of sensitivity. So that was one of my ouch moments or learning lessons, if I may say so.
And what about the aha moment? We are more eager to listen to your aha moment as well.
Many aha moments. Let me share something more recent. When we launched, our MD was very clearly a sponsor for this, the Indian ethnic wear category, as I called it. But in Bhaskar's mind, our MD, he said, Ajoy, we have to launch saris. And there was a whole project work which had happened before that. I wasn't convinced, to be honest. But then we went through a lot of work, and we finally came up with Taneira. Taneira is the youngest and the newest brand from Titan, and it plays in the space of handcrafted, hand-woven saris from across the many clusters of India. So it's India under a roof, hand-woven, natural, and occasion wear, maybe light occasion to heavy occasion. Pretty much in the mold of Tanishq, but in its own category. So when we actually launched, we did a proof of concept in Bangalore at the Taj West End Hotel. And I was there all the 9 days. And, you know, we were receiving a lot of invitees and guests and all the people who came over, customers. I was not very sure what this is going to be like. Believe me, Anil, it was crazy. When I saw women enter the place, and we had done it up in you visit room by room and see different clusters and different saris. Most of the target customer was 40 to 50, 40 plus, if I would say, all the way up to 60 also, 60, 65. But when I saw these women enter and start, they were like kids in a candy store. We thought, okay, let's see how they react to saris. Maybe, of course, beautiful product. We were in love with it, but we didn't know how the customer. My God, and many of them came in gym wear, came in modern wear, but no matter what they wore, when they came in, they were like kids in a candy store. They went all over, looking at it, feeling it. Every customer spent a minimum of 1 hour in that suite where we had taken up. We didn't have so many products. We may have some 1,000 odd SKUs from different clusters, but they spent a lot of time. People came back. They said, can we bring our sister-in-law, mother-in-law? daughter, I'll come back. And it was sheer joy. Just seeing them, I realized the power of the category and what saris mean to an Indian woman, no matter how old she is and no matter what she's wearing at that time. And they wanted to acquire, even though there were women who were holding five saris in their hand, not knowing which one to let go of. And the moment they let go of one, somebody picks it up. I have not seen this kind of consumer behavior. I said, wow, this is a category which the woman loves. And it requires us to kind of bring it back in its full energy. I mean, we can't bring it back. We can only reintroduce, the product and the woman. It was amazing. And this is all Tanishq profile customers, modern women in Bangalore, and we would think that saris and women, are we outdated or are we in the real world? So this was my aha moment when I saw customers and I saw the way they interact. I realized no research can tell you what a direct interaction of when a customer sees a product or sees a brand. And that observation is completely non-verbal. It is not based from what they say here. It is based from the heart. And that's, I think, the reality of how people buy and what they do.
Great. So before I move on to the second question, you would have noticed that though we are happy to see each other, I didn't shake hands with you. It is a deliberate exercise because we need to follow the social and physical distancing norms. And
sure.
So now we move forward. My question to you is about Titan as an organization. See, Titan is a stock market's darling. It is also one of the most admired marketing companies. And what we have seen is the company, either it is process and systems driven or it is people oriented. What I gather from my interaction with various team members of Titan, that they are all very grounded and they are very open in their communication. And if I have to describe the leadership at Titan, whether it is the legendary Bhaskar Bhatt or CKV or even you, if I have to describe in 2 words, it is humility personified. So I would now request you to share the secret sauce of Titan's culture, how you have been able to maintain the balance between process-driven and people-driven organization. So that is what has made Titan a leader. When last week Bhaskar was speaking at a webinar, and he says respect for the individual is the primary foundation of what Titan is all about. So please share with us the secret sauce.
Yeah, I think I was going to share exactly that one of the biggest values which I have seen over 29 years in Titan is we have articulated it perhaps a little more, nicely in the more recent years, but the sentiment has been there. We call it as the unconditional positive regard for every individual. I think we truly believe in it. Even when we look at our own vision, we say create elevating moments, etc. But if we were to simplify all that corporate jargon to say, we are all people working with other people, serving people. We are a very people-centric organization in which, be it a customer, be it our business partner, be it, it could be a franchisee, it could be a vendor partner, our own people, our employees. It could be, people from the public or the media, such as yourself, or it could be investors and investment analysts. We don't really, or for that matter, shareholders, right? So we don't really distinguish too much and say, the shareholder is most important or somebody who's putting money or the customer is most important. Of course, the customer is important, that the entire process is about serving a customer's need. But to regard every stakeholder in the business are all people. Even now, when we are looking at people, we are talking about people's safety, and it is not just customer safety. It is how will my store staff come from their home to work? and go back without getting contaminated? How do I ensure zero defect? Nobody in our ecosystem, from Karigar to store person, gets infected, because for me, that is my failure. You know, I have to think ecosystem. So we are people serving other people. In the process of serving all people, we create what Mr. Desai used to say, our founder. We create an operating surplus because of the values that we bring in, be it quality, design, you know, and the customer pays a certain value, and all of that goes to pay everybody. And then there's an operating surplus that we create. That goes back to people. It may go to the community, it may go to shareholders, it may go to employees, it may go to our business partners. That we have a whole process in which we ensure that we share what is made. So unlike maybe a typical hard-nosed capitalist business, you know, I think most American companies, that's where that's the home of capitalism, where the shareholder and shareholder returns is what everything gets measured by. But we have always believed, and I think now the world is coming around to believing, that there is something called multi-stakeholder returns, multi-stakeholder serving. Everybody is important. Yes, the shareholder is important, but why is my business partner less important? The business partners is putting so much risk, so much effort, employing so many people. Why are the karigars not important? You know, so that is one belief. The second belief is, finally, we are all accessible. We can lead from the front, we can take decisions. But when you're running a large setup, you have to trust your people to take decisions. So people are empowered to decide. Now, if somebody decides that they have served a customer in a particular way, we tell them, go ahead and do it. You know, we'll figure out the approvals later. Similarly, if it comes to taking a decision which is within a certain ambit of, you know, empowerment policy for a vendor, or for even now, when we were discussing COVID, when we were having steering committee reviews, there were people at various levels. As long as they're responsible for a unit which is independent, I told them, hey guys, when it comes to safety, act first, take permission later. Don't worry. I'm backing you up. Cannot take a chance on people. So I think that's been very important. The third thing, I think Titan is very process oriented. Yes, as a professional company, and we have won internally in the Tata Group, we have the Business Excellence Awards, and you know, there's a whole assessment that happens on our processes. So we do follow that. But we find that it's important, you know, in an organization, you need to have the yin and the yang, or Shiva Shakti, if you want to use an Indian analogy. I think processes, structure, and all that is coming from a certain approach. But there is also nurturing, creativity, and a certain degree of softness, you know, innovate. It's okay if you fail, you know, it's okay to try out new products. It's okay to try out new brand. Like I failed when I told you about the fact that I changed something about the brand. I didn't get sacked for it. I got a discussion around it, and I realized that yes, this is important. For me, the learning was the customer owns the brand. No, my boss didn't come and fire me. Never. Because it's my job to run that brand and the business. So, you know, I am free to do it. But yes, I should be sensitive to the way I do it. So I think these are some of the things which and the other thing we do, Anil, is we agonize over people decisions. In our TMC, Titan Management Committee meetings or CXO meetings, the financials discussions happens very quickly. You know, we align very quickly. But when it comes to people decisions, the conversation can go for many hours. Small things we'll agonize over. Should we subsidize the van by 50%, or should we subsidize by 75% or 25%? It's a very, you know, small ticket. Or when we were shifting office from Yamloor, old airport road, to Electronic City, Bhaskar himself went in. He said, let me see if I take a van and go, how much time it takes at different times in the day. Why should an MD do that? So I think somewhere, you know, I think it's in these day-to-day activities. I can't say how the culture came about. I can only say this is what we do. And this is how the culture then emerges. And of course, we must be goofing also in some places. But then there are people who come and tell us something has changed. And then we realize, oops, you know, what's changed? Let's understand what happened. So as long as we are willing to listen, be it to customers or be it to people internally, I think we will remain an organic organization, not a hard-nosed structural hierarchical organization.
Fantastic.
I don't
So
know if I answered your question, but I gave you a glimpse.
Yeah. But I can only say that the people first approach has paid rich dividends, because an average Titanian is proud to be a team member of Titan. And there are many examples like yourself who have dedicated their entire working life to one company. And it's no mean achievement. So that's one part.
Anil bhai, at this time, I think we can request Jayant bhai to play that blessed campaign of Dua Ka Sona, the one which is the black and white one, Jayant bhai.
Yeah.
There's a campaign which actually brings it alive. Yeah. This is a campaign which won us a lot of
सोने का हार, वादों का ये हार, एक नई शुरुआत की पुकार है, सपनों से बंधा नया परिवार है। यही हार साजिद के हुनर का आकार है, रमेश के आने वाले कल का आधार है, नयन को अंधकार से, कुशल को कैंसर से बचाने के लिए भी जिम्मेदार है। इसीलिए ये हार माँ बाप का प्यार ही नहीं, हजारों कारीगरों की दुआओं का उपहार है। जब आप तनिष्क से खरीदते हैं, आप हजारों लोगों की जिंदगी बेहतर बनाते हैं, और उन्हीं लोगों की दुआओं से बनता है ये दुआ का सोना।
Thanks, Jayant bhai.
Yeah. So Ajoy, my follow-up question to this is, I have understood the culture. You may not have been able to to explain to us how it really works. It works, and it works just fine. But when it comes to the career path, because today India has so much of talent that there are so young aspiring individuals. And what I've observed that the leadership positions are all led by people who are MBAs. So is having an MBA degree a prerequisite to reach at the top? That is number one. And the number two is, I also found that many of the important functions in Tanishq and Titan for that matter are being headed by women. To give you an example, your design head is a woman. So is your brand head of Mia, Zoya. Your marketing head recently recruited is a woman.
Tanishq.
So how have you been able to define and share a career path with individuals, and how have you worked the gender equality balance in your organization?
So first question I'll answer, is it necessary to be an MBA? Not true actually. It so happens to be that many of us at the top are MBAs, but let me say my colleague who's heading the eyewear division, CEO of eyewear division, Shaumin Bhaumik, is actually a graduate engineer trainee who joined us from, I think, REC Trichy way back in 1991 or 92. He's come up the manufacturing side, retail, and now, so, and I think he's a fabulous colleague. Similarly, in fact, his predecessor, Ronnie Talati, was a finance guy. He's an accounts guy. He worked for a long time in the Tata Group, 44 years. And he retired on December 31st of 2019. He is not an MBA. Revati Kant, my colleague who heads design centrally for all the functions and all the divisions, she heads design and innovation. She is also an engineer from REC Trichy. She and Shaumin are, I think, batchmates. And she has played many roles in the organization. So it's not necessary, though somewhere perhaps the business perspective and the kind of, roles that come your way can sometimes work that way. Our CFO is not an MBA. He's a chartered accountant, Subbu. So I must say we have a healthy mix, but I also agree with you that we have a lot of, you can say, I don't think we have tried to build gender equality in our system consciously, but I think because of Titan's yin and yang balance, a lot of focus on aesthetics. I think from our DNA, and I would, say Mr. Desai, our founder is the one who, Xerxes Desai, who built the DNA of product excellence and refined aesthetics, not just in the product, but in the way marketing communication is handled. And in terms of art, there's a lot of art that he used to appreciate. And somewhere the masculine principle and the feminine principle came together beautifully. So I think we've always had a lot of ladies in our important functions. You're right. Many of our marketing heads, the CMO of marketing, Kalpana, is there. The head of watches division, my colleague Suparna Mitra is a lady. Revati Kansi, chief design head. The marketing head of Tanishq Ranjani is there. Shamla, business head of Mia. Amanpreet, business head of Zoya. The marketing head of Eyewear, Shalini. So you're right. There are a lot of women who kind of lead the function, but you find a lot of them also in our manufacturing, in watches, in our assembly unit. We have a lot of women who do the assembly in Hosur. In Pantnagar, both in watches and in jewelry, almost the entire factory is mostly women. Our stores, in our Tanishq stores and many of our watches stores, also a lot of women who are RSOs, who are serving the customers. I think it helps in jewelry that we are serving the woman customer, and therefore even our category head, merchandising and category head, Piali, is a woman. So it does happen to be that it helps in building an intuitive understanding of the customer. But I don't think we go out with a criteria that we want a woman. It just happens to be that they are bubbled up naturally. Even the international marketing head, Vandana, is a woman. So it just happens to be that, and this is not true only now. If I go back 10 years, you'll find a similar, the marketing head for accessories, skin and accessories is also a woman, Kamalpreet. So it so happens to be that way. I think the head of Taneira, CXO, she is also CEO of that, is Rajeshwari Srinivasan. She's also a woman. So I think it is only in the last 6 months that we've started discussing formally gender diversity and inclusion. And we keep wondering, what is it that we need to do differently? Because naturally speaking, we are women. On our board, we have had women directors for many years. Irina Vittal is on the board. Hema Ravichandar is on our board. She was the ex-CHRO of Infosys. We had Vinita Bali for a long time on our board. We had Rama Bijapurkar before Vinita Bali was there also. So we've always had 2 or 3 women directors on our board. And so maybe it has come naturally to us, maybe because we are in the lifestyle business, maybe because we had a lot of jewelry and Raga watches, and we've always had perfumes and saris. So I think, but it's not a conscious attempt. I think it has come as a natural seeding of balancing the masculine and feminine in an interesting manner. And I would credit Mr. Desai, our founder, and Bhaskar Bhatt, our previous MD, to kind of having nurtured that culture.
So if you talk about the gems and jewelry industry in India, it may be one of the largest employer of women. But those roles which the women perform in the industry are mainly at the manufacturing factory level, or maybe design level and merchandising level. So there is a lot of room at the top. And
Yes.
I think the industry should take an example and emulate the market leader. And I'm sure that a lot of planning and discussions are happening for the last couple of years. And we will see a change scenario going forward. So as a newcomer to the industry, you cannot, you took over about in October, maybe 7 or 8 months. So what has been your outlook? before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID? Because that's the standard question which is posed by the interviewer in most of the webinars, and you can't really escape it. So over to you.
So I think from the time I took on, I think I took on at the end of Q2 of our fiscal year last year, 1st October. And we had just come out of a very rough quarter. Gold prices had shot up by, I think, 20% in Q2. That is the June-July 2019 period. And that really held back buyer growth. Thereafter, partly because of gold prices and partly because of consumer sentiment due to economic headwinds, which had already started playing up in India, we saw very volatile demand. And what struck me is that, I think if we don't continue to grow buyers, see, we were growing in value, we were somehow managing double-digit growths, but very early double-digit growths in terms of our retail growth and top-line growth. And pretty much that was the outlook I had painted out on the investor calls as well. Right up to 15th of March, we were comfortably perched towards hitting early double-digit growths in the outlook, which I had shared, 11% to 13% kind of thing. We were operating well within that. Thereafter, COVID happened, and we had to shut stores, and that shaved off a significant part of that growth. So we finally ended it in single digits. We grew at a time when the industry actually declined. If you look at gold imports in the country, if you look at overall, the jewelry industry probably saw a -5 to -15% decline, depending on type of player. And maybe there are a few players like us who probably clocked in single-digit growths or flat. So overall, the category has been seeing some stress in the last few years. It's not, I think this is well before COVID came. Maybe part of it is to do with gold prices, part of it is liquidity, NBFC, funding availability for jewelers, working capital, and an overall post-demonetization in GST in India, a certain move towards a formalization of the sector. So the small independent jewelers have been having a tough time, to be honest. As a consequence, I think the ecosystem has been under some amount of stress. Even the diamond sector hasn't really been doing that well. Our exporters, when I talk to many of our vendor partners, it's been a rough year for them last year, even before. And they said, yes, these things happen. International markets go through these presses, these challenges. Now, during COVID, obviously, the world itself has got impacted. And I can see that, when the entire world, see the problem with COVID is what? It is a demand and supply side stress. So there's a demand stress and there is a supply side disruption. When both things happen simultaneously, it impacts the entire ecosystem, the entire value chain, and you don't know how they will respond, whether they'll respond gradually at the same level or one is going to come faster than the other. So that uncertainty as to when situations will start stabilizing and how the balance between the demand and supply side disruption is going to play out. It could be that it plays out best case scenario. Imagine scenarios like this. So as it creates a lot of anxiety in the ecosystem. My own sense is that going forward, it's very difficult for anybody to predict. Obviously, we've been shut for the last 6-7 weeks. It's only the last 1 week we've started reopening stores. We've only opened about 65 stores out of the 350 odd stores between Tanishq and Mia, and about, I think, 10-12 stores in Carrot Lane. E-commerce has not yet started, because it's still a non-essential. So obviously the first few months, we've pretty much seen hardly anything, other than that, an e-Akshay Tritiya, in which we had a lot of customers booking orders with us. And they continue to do so. We've not really seen hard sale. Sale is when we complete the transaction. Going forward, it's very difficult to predict. The approach we are taking is, this is a very choppy time. The next 3 to 6 months will continue to be very volatile. And there's no point in trying to predict what will happen. I think it's best to recognize there's volatility, recognize that you cannot predict what will happen 6 months later. So you plan 3 months at a time. The good part is we have inventory, our vendor partners have inventory, our stores have inventory. So, the moment customers come, we will hopefully not send them back. The second advantage is jewelry, unlike many other fashion categories, is a fungible asset. The worst case, you can always take back jewelry, melt it, and recognize the value and repurpose it. So that's an advantage. It's not fashion linked as much as, let's say, other categories. So it doesn't have that cycle that, oh, spring is gone and will I get something else in autumn and something else in winter. Fourth benefit, demand. Some of the demand, at least a large part of the demand, is deferred. Why am I saying deferred? Because wedding purchases will happen, if not in Q1, it will happen in Q3 or Q4. Q2, I'm not saying, because we don't know how the stores will open, start, shut, whether certain cities will go into stress, and so on and so forth. And customer confidence will also take time. We believe the first step, Anilji, is to build customer confidence before anything else. Why should you and I go to a store if I'm going to be fundamentally afraid of my safety? So the last few weeks, I have personally spent time only reviewing customer safety and people safety at stores and employee safety at our factories. So customer confidence is the step one of the strategy, and do real safety protocol. The way we do mystery audits in our stores, we should do mystery audits on safety. We are going to do safety assurance audits. So safety is the bedrock. On top of it, the next big thing that we think will happen is there is going to be a significant, and I saw some questions somebody asked about digital, is online going to play a big role? Obviously, what I think years of discount promotions that e-commerce players have been trying to do to build a habit of buying online, the last 6-7 weeks has created a habit. We would never have had this conference in this manner if it wasn't for COVID, right? Completely virtual webinar. I wouldn't have engaged with so many of my associates virtually if it wasn't for COVID. Customers wouldn't have bought so many products, grocery products online every day if it wasn't for COVID, and so on and so forth. So I think whatever has happened in the last 7 weeks has fundamentally changed the way the customer is going to behave. And that is here to stay. Now, whether it is going to be 30%, 50% of our category sale or only 20%, I don't know. All I know is this medium will influence purchase. So when I'm saying they will come online, they may select online, they may make up some part of their mind online, they may come and purchase offline. We are also seeing a lot of people are going to prefer to shop from the environment of their home, at least for the next few months. In which case, what can we as jewelers do to cater to their demand sitting at home? Can we do video-based selling? Can I do a try-at-home service? Can we help them complete 90% of their selection online so that they come in only at an appointed time at the store and complete the whole piece? Yes, I agree, Sanjay, you're talking about lightweight. I'll come to that point later. But I think there is going to be a shift in the way customers will make their choices and complete their transactions. We don't know how the customer will behave because we don't know how the circumstances are for everybody. But we can imagine these are the 3-4 different things that they can do. And can we be prepared to see whichever one works, we will do that. So I think we have to all start behaving like startups. We'll have to iterate, we'll have to experiment, we'll have to learn and adapt. Now, many people ask this question: will customers buy lightweight or will they buy heavy? How will they buy wedding purchases online? I agree with you. Nobody's going to take a chance of buying, 100,000 rupees or whatever, to maybe 1,000 pounds product sitting at home. They may want to try it out, but can we give them flexibility? Can I get them to try it at home if they don't want to come to the store, or at an appointed time when it is safe for them to come? When the crowd is not too much, or they can buy it, try it, and give them flexibility to return it. Yeah, I agree. 10 carat, 20 carat necklace and bangles, I don't know, but we have to figure out by having a conversation with the customer, and we have to figure out how we are going to be able to serve these different. And let me tell you, historically, jewelers have been selling jewelry by going to people's houses. If I go back many thousands of years, how did they do it? and can we do it at scale? Even today, in one of our brands, we have a luxury brand called Zoya. Zoya has been doing appointment selling and try at home selling for customers, for their individual customers at home. Carrot Lane, let me give you another example, which is serving a lot of younger customers at lower ticket size. They have started a service called Try at Home, and they've been at it for 2 years. They've iterated, learned from it, and in the last few months, they have figured out this is the way to do it from last 5-6 months. Try at Home is something which is growing rapidly. They have figured out a method to do it in which the customer actually books appointments and jewelry comes home with the salesperson, transaction is completed, and it is growing very rapidly, even before COVID. So if it can happen for the very low price, and if it can happen for Zoya, which is very high price, why can't it happen for Tanishq? So I think some of these mindsets we have to change. I never believed that I could engage with 300 or 200 franchisees, 100 vendor partners, and maybe 70 store managers, 10 webinars, 5 investors, and about 100 employees in 5 weeks. I would have imagined I should visit all these places. But it is no longer true. That was my assumption. And now I know that this is a completely new way to work. So I think a post-COVID world throws up opportunities. There are challenges, but I would like to look at it. If we chase the customer, not our competition, you're likely to be right. Competition will follow whatever you may do or not do. But as Tanishq, we will follow the customer. Sorry, slightly long answer, but I think I'd like to share the way we are thinking about it pre, during, and post-COVID.
Great. So in fact, you have answered some of the questions which I was going to ask later, but doesn't matter, it saves time and it went on with the flow. I would like to say that we Indians love gold. And before COVID, what happened was the turnover of many companies grew because the gold prices appreciated. But the tonnage actually reduced. It was presented by KPMG and everybody agrees to that. Now what has happened is gold has again come back in the limelight because it is supposed to be it has proved to be a safe haven in times of uncertainty. Most retailers are quite upbeat and they say that, because of the reasons stated by you, that there are so many marriages, there is an investment demand, so gold sales will improve. But my question to you is, the government of India is promoting sovereign gold bonds very aggressively. And gold ETFs are also catching on because most of us middle class people who have invested in shares and mutual funds, we find that we have got a haircut. You can see my hairstyle. So having said that,
my hair is turned white.
So my question to you is, will a part of the gold sale will be diverted to paper gold and gold bonds? So do you think that is going to happen? Will it impact the jewelry industry? That is one part of my question. And the second part is about the online sale, but we'll come to that later. You can please answer this question.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Gold is a safe haven. I personally believe that a lot of people are waiting to buy a lot of gold. सर अगर मैं हिंदी में बात करूंगा तो बहुत सारे लोगों को समझ में नहीं आएगा. आई एम टोल्ड ये थोड़ा इंटरनेशनल है. सम क्वेश्चन प्लीज यूज नेशनल लैंग्वेज. आजकल नेशनल लैंग्वेज हिंदी भी है, अंग्रेजी भी है.
We'll have a separate session in Hindi. I'm sure. If we have time, we can always do that.
तो कोशिश करेंगे सर, but I hope the others can understand. So, and we may not have so much time to answer in both. But yes, gold, I believe, is going to play a significant role, certainly for the next 3 to 4 months, till the uncertainty is very high. And I think people may see diamonds a little bit as a luxury because, it is not, the pricing in diamond is not so clear for most people. We know those people who buy solitaires certainly see an investment value in solitaires as well, or larger carat diamonds, but not so much in the smaller side. Now, because government of India is proposing this and sovereign bonds and even paper gold and e-gold, I think it doesn't matter. Frankly speaking, yes, there is always a large number of people who want to invest. And this is money not coming from jewelry. This is money, as you said, coming from mutual funds. Or it is coming from, let's say, maybe bank fixed deposits where the rates have crashed. You don't really earn anything. So if there is safety requirement, that money is not coming from the share of wallet of jewelry. It is coming from the share of wallet of other investments, especially the people who buy paper gold and maybe digital gold or ETFs. They are investment mindset. But the people who buy jewelry, they are looking at multiple things. They are looking at the fact that, so let's say when it comes to weddings, the parents will want to ensure that they continue to give their daughter something which is of everlasting value, which is as eternal as their love. So there is a mix of emotion and rationality. They know it will appreciate. Some people call it Sridhan. Some people say it is a token of our love, whatever you want to call it. But there is emotion and there is rationality sitting together, whether it is gold or gold plus diamonds. Dono mein hai. Second, even when you're welcoming a daughter-in-law in your home, you want to welcome with, because there's a symbolism. So when there's rituals in India, festivals hai, or weddings, I think these are very deeply connected with the category. It's a 5,000-year-old category. So it is deeply intertwined with our tradition. And during this time, when things are uncertain, you like to look for things which are of everlasting value, and you go back to your roots, your family, your home, your culture, your tradition. Why do we think so many people are seeing Mahabharata and Ramayana replay over the last several weeks? It's got unprecedented viewership. And in India now, I think there's a very clear pride in India and how India has come together to fight this. It is almost a warlike situation. So I think these are real trends and real emotions in which, and it has also been further drummed up by our political lead, our prime minister's speeches, etc. So I think there's a lot of pride in India in the way we've gone about doing things, and all that kind of will spill over into. So I feel for our category, the share of wallet will come from reduced expenses on travel, reduced expenses on services, those expensive events, five events from Mehndi to cocktails, which is not going to happen in the social distancing era, or you're going to reduce it. Where will that money go? I think a lot of that money will go into jewelry, because you will say, this is not trivial. It will last and it will grow in value. So I think, and I don't think the people who buy paper gold and the people who buy jewelry for investment or gold for investment are the same set of people. They are two different segments. That is my personal view. For youngsters, I believe a lot of youngsters who earlier were looking at gold in a particular manner, and there was a very nice survey done by World Gold Council which says 30% of Indians have not considered gold because they find they don't know whom to trust and what caratage. I'm surprised. I was shocked by that survey. In my mind, a lot of youngsters who probably were looking at, millennials especially, looking at gold as waste, may suddenly start seeing it as a smart way, and maybe digital gold, and then convert that gold into jewelry whenever you require. There may be new models that will evolve, but I think a lot of interest will come from an audience which was otherwise not considering gold as such a big thing. So diamonds, yes, but gold is going to get a lot more prominence. So this is my response to your question, Anil.
Yeah. So very well articulated. I would also like to know that post-COVID, since there is a anti-China sentiment all over the world, a lot of enthusiasm is there among the industrialists, and they feel that manufacturing activity will shift to India. So if that happens in the gold and jewelry industry, I know a large percentage of your production is outsourced, but you also have a very strong vendor partner base. So in case that happens, are you geared up? Are you very optimistic about exporting outside India post-COVID?
So to be honest, we haven't decided that. In fact, we are on the anvil we were to launch a store in Dubai, which was scheduled to open on 1st April. And then of course, COVID happened and some of the staff is here, but they had come for training and we have not opened. Our first step is to launch the store in Dubai in Meena Bazaar. And that for us is a testing ground to see whether we would be able to make an impact in the Gulf. We have been hearing a lot of pent-up demand for Tanishq in the Gulf. So we wanted to test it out. So this year we will test out whether we have a working business model and how it shapes up. We'll start with Dubai and then see how it goes. In terms of other markets, we haven't yet really thought about it. We are trying to understand, is there some demand for the North American markets, etc., or maybe the NRI population in certain pockets of North America. But it is still at a early exploratory stage. The other thing we have also decided is that we will focus a lot more, even if we look at international, we will explore NRI, dominant clusters, because Indians already know the brand. So you don't need to spend too much effort and money to build the brand awareness. The fourth thing that I would like to share is we would prefer to, if we are doing international, we would prefer to do it under our own brand name and in a retail oriented format, as opposed to a distribution oriented format, or as opposed to a private label. We've done some private label, I think, for some people in certain components and certain kinds of jewelry, but more as exploratory, because that is a very different business. I think we are better suited to dealing with our own brand and as a retailer. So that's something which we are very clear about. So yes, for us, the larger opportunity is sitting in India, because we are less than 5% of the total market. The headroom for growth is very high, especially when the tailwind of people wanting, to buy from trusted brands and large players. The formalization has kind of shifted. So we think there's a lot of opportunity. And access itself, we are already in 200 towns, but we know there are at least another 50 towns where there is scope for Tanishq to expand into. So the sheer opportunity is very different compared to international markets. But yes, we have a separate team exploring that all the time. But it's going to be a very small component, at least for the next one year.
So when we were discussing about the online medium, it's a very exciting and digital medium. It's not a new medium. Somehow our industry, the jewelry industry, has been rather late or slow in adopting the digital medium. Everybody realizes the potential. But what has happened is this lockdown, the pace, it will accelerate at a much faster rate than what was happening earlier. And you also mentioned about the habits. I was reading a very interesting book by Charles Duhigg. It's called Power of Habit. What he's saying is, if you have to get rid of a bad habit, or if you have to inculcate a new habit, it takes only 21 days. 21 days. Okay. Or some people have said, some other authors have said 60 days. So one positive outcome of the fact that most people hated video conferencing, and it's an age-old technology. But now see, every day so many webinars happening. So that is a positive outcome. But when we are talking about the online space, you have 450 stores across various brands, whether it is Tanishq or Mia, Zoya. Primarily, it's your brick and mortar business model. Everybody is talking about the omni-channel model. So here I want to know that how do you intend going forward? How do you intend to integrate your franchise partner in the omni-channel ecosystem? That is one part. And second part is about CaratLane. CaratLane was pure play, digital player, online player. It has evolved from 0 store to 82 stores today. So 93, 93 stores. Okay. So I would like to have your views on these 2 points.
Right. I think I spoke about it. Habit change is certainly something which is going to drive people towards a digital medium. Whether they complete the transaction or it's going to be an omni. I think it'll be omni. It's going to be a joint closure. Just to share with you, I think CaratLane does about 35 to close to 40% of its total turnover comes from a joint closure. So yes, a lot of online gets sold and completed there. But now with the 92 odd stores, which it has expanded to, we are seeing a lot of joint closure, and that is a significant chunk of the business. So I think the first thing is to recognize that there is no online versus offline. There is online and offline. The customer is not seeing online versus offline, right? We as customers, we'll see Google Maps, and then we'll be catching an Uber, and then we will reach somewhere. We are moving seamlessly between the two worlds. Same is true for the shopper. She's seeing something, Instagram, oh, I love that Sabyasachi lehenga, iske sath kaun si jewelry jayegi, shortlist. Go online, check which players have it, shortlist, reach out, somebody will do a virtual chat with you. Go to the store, try it on, like it, move on. So that's how things will evolve. Now, I think joint closure is something even Tanishq has thought about in a big way. We actually get close to 1 million visitors on our website a month. Yeah. And of course, we have continued to get, there was a drop initially, but post Akshaya Tritiya, it's shot up. So we are seeing 1.2 million visitors, and many of them are repeat, but unique is at least 1 million. And we get a lot of leads, cold leads, warm leads. So we have put a whole team in place to say, how do I look at these leads? How do I talk to them? Either I can complete the transaction, or I can say, hey, where are you closest? Do you want to visit a store? Can we shortlist some products for you? The store will get in touch. In fact, right now you can book an appointment on our website, for somebody to connect with you to a store. We have also tied up with Google My Business. We've tied up with one more website, I forget their name, for booking online appointments to come to the store and try it out. I think many other players have also been doing it. There's nothing new about it. And it's across categories, yes, it's happening all the time. So I believe that the future is going to be a blended one, because the customer will move in a blended manner, and the customer she has been moving so in so many other categories. In jewelry, we have been late to adopt, I must admit. We are trying to catch up. So the second important thing in this online piece is, I think the customer will still look for convenience and price. There's no question about it. And what the online thing does is enables people to look at price across different jewelers. What it can't explain is why the price is different in terms of making and the product and the design. But convenience, customer will be willing to pay a premium for convenience. Customer will be willing to pay a premium for trust. Customer will be willing to pay a premium for transparency in the way we are operating. Because how do I trust somebody? If you tell me what is the price at which you're selling, what is the price at which you take back? If I'm going to give all kinds of purchase on which I write, this is the price, this much cut, yeah, okay. It should be very clear. If you're selling at this rate, you should buy back at this rate. And if there is any deduction, then this is relating to some operating costs which are there. So to me, the whole piece is about, just one second. To me, the whole piece is about being transparent and direct with the customer. I also think, Anil bhai, I think the millennial customer leads us in this process. And the millennial customer is already buying a lot of CaratLane from us. The millennial customer is already buying Tanishq, Mia, and for many other players. It's not just for us. They're already there online and they're shopping. In Akshaya Tritiya, we saw a new segment of people who came online. Suddenly our ticket values jumped 2 to 3 times, because this customer who came on board, the conversion was better because they were serious buyers. Second, they had higher ticket sizes. They were willing to spend more. I think they have not bought, they have given us the advance and they said you can deliver it to us whenever. So we suddenly saw a slightly more older and traditional customer who came online during this period. So yes, you're right. Online will be there. We cannot guess and second guess the customer. Whether more people will come, less will come. I think they will come. If we are ready, the customer is ready. We have to be ready.
Yes. So all I can say after listening to you is it's an established fact that Titan has been able to command a premium, and that is why it is the cynosure of all eyes. Maybe you can say neighbors envy, owner's pride, owner being the franchise partner. But having said that, we discussed a lot of things about the millennials. So what millennials are looking at today is, apart from transparency, they are looking at companies who have sustainability as one of its core. And being young, and being techno savvy, they are also preferring to buy from an environment that uses technology. And the third and most important aspect is, everybody saying that people don't buy products, they buy consumer experience. So there is a person by the name of Doug Stephens. He is known as the retail futurist. He's based in Canada. And what he has said in his book, that going forward, retailers should not look at profit per square feet, but experiences per square feet. So what is your take on these three factors: sustainability, technology, and customer experience, with respect to millennials?
Millennials, younger. So I think, if I were to look at millennials, I'll come to each of these, but I feel, let me give you a little bit about what we have understood of millennials. One is that millennial is comfortable in her own shoes and in her own skin. She is not wanting to be like somebody else. So with Mia brand, we find that I need to seek my identity and express it. I don't need to adopt some other identity, and therefore the millennial is independent, is more optimistic, like all young people are, and certainly more secure. Despite this COVID, amongst everybody, they'll be the most secure because they have a natural optimism for the future. I agree that they are seeking experiences, but I believe, and that will come on. I think that will remain. So we will have to deliver experiences. But more importantly, I think the millennial is seeking honesty from brands. I was tempted to use the word authenticity and sustainability. I think the first thing the millennial is saying, don't give me all stories. Tell me the truth. Tell me who you are and have an honest, candid conversation. Don't give me sexy ads to attract me. Can you tell me conversations which are meaningful? So they want to engage with the brand. And I think that is something which we must recognize with. The second thing they're also saying is, I think the millennial is that much more fashion conscious. This is not to say that they don't look forward to emotion. There is a good blend of emotion as well. And I want to also share that for them, sustainability is also about how are you good to the planet? Is consumption the only important thing? Are you doing the right thing? Can government do everything for the planet and industry does something else? So they are looking also for corporate players who will supplement the efforts. Don't harm the environment to start with. That's the first step. The next step is take care of people and take care of the planet and ensure that you have sustainable processes. But to be honest, is it beginning to reflect in the product choices they are making right now in India? I am not so very sure. Is it reflecting in the noises that we are seeing online? Yes, of course. We hear that, we see that, because they are also seeing that, listen, guys, you guys are going to go. We are going to inherit the world. And this is the world we are going to live in. So that is the honest answer. But, I wanted to share with you, there was a video on CaratLane about new experiences of love. And I'll request Jen to play it because it shows a certain kind of millennial. And then I want to follow it up with a different kind of millennial, afterwards. So maybe we'll just play that. Yeah. Not this one, the CaratLane new experiences, the second last one on your browser. Yeah.
Love is a beautiful phrase, one that never feels the same. Let it play.
And once again, he swept me off my feet.
You never know what love's about.
It's crazy. He's got me online all the time.
Love is a beautiful.
Finally, someone who gets exactly where I'm going.
So let it play, yeah.
How
How do I feel about him? I could go on forever. But I'll let this do the talking. Happy Valentine's Day. New expressions of love, starting at rupees 4,500 on carrotlane.com.
Yeah, we can stop that. So I think this expresses a certain kind of millennial mindset. I also wanted to show a very different kind of mindset in millennials, and I'm tempted to show the one from, it's an older one, but it is by Tanishq Zaira. Jayan bhai, if you could show that one. That shows a couple, a millennial couple. No, not this one. Yeah, where the second one, yeah. This one, yes.
दोनों बहुत different है ना?
मैम ये हमारा नया डायमंड कलेक्शन है, ज़ायरा.
That's really nice, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I think it's really nice.
This?
Of course. Beautiful.
ओके मैम.
हो गया ना? तो चलें?
तुम्हें सिड याद है?
सिड. वही घोंचू ना जिसने तुम्हें 30 में प्रपोज किया था. टफर कहेंगा.
तुम्हारे और उसके बीच चूज करना बहुत डिफिकल्ट था. इस बार मैं गलत चूज करके रिग्रेट नहीं करना चाहती. ये कितने का है?
ओनली 35,000 मैम.
So pretty.
Excuse me.
यस सर.
ये वाला भी पैक कीजिए.
ओके सर.
तुम्हें ना हीरे की परख ही नहीं है.
क्योंकि दिल हमेशा सिर्फ एक ही पे नहीं आता. Zaira by Tanishq.
So thanks Jayan bhai. So Anil, I wanted to share that even the millennial is looking for real moments, and maybe she expresses it in her way, and there is a certain playfulness that is there. So it is not all sustainability, discount. You know, whenever we think millennial, we think lightweight, low price, discount, online, sustainable. Either we swing there or we go only fashion and sustainability, but we forget that the emotion is still human. The method of conveying that emotion has to be adapted to that millennial. And I'm not saying we need to play ads to show that, but even when we are interacting with the millennial woman online, it has to be much more conversational, candid, honest, two-way. Much more two-way than it would have been for an older customer.
So after watching all those videos, I can only say that Tanishq as a company, as a division, has defied conventional wisdom, in the sense that when we talk about communicating, we always define our customer as a very a focused group, whereas you have appealed to a large section and a wider section of society, and you have been successful at it. So I think the reason why you have been able to command premium while others have not been able to do so is also a lot has to do with the storytelling, and they are really exciting stories, and everybody loves Tanishq commercials. I had an opportunity to go through your digital campaign during COVID, Golden Moments, and I was really touched because those golden moments are defined as moments that you use for yourself, learning a new skill, or spending time with the family, or painting, or sketching. Nowhere there is an attempt to sell. I have always believed in the lifetime value of the customer, and an average customer is emotional, and if you engage with your customers emotionally on a continuous basis, you are bound to get the returns. This needs to be learned by most of us in the jewelry industry, because we tend to be transactional. So hats off to you. And I am also tempted to quote an American poet and a civil activist, Maya Angelou. She has said, people may not exactly remember what you said or what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And Tanishq has definitely made them feel better and feel good. So congratulations, it was a very touching ad, and I was really, as a marketing professional, I was really touched with this campaign, and I have shared it with my families and friends. So moving on, this is the second last question. There is an established connect between fashion, apparel, and jewelry. So for every dress, there is a matching jewelry. But if you see the fashion designers and jewelry designers have joined hands only on the ramp. There are very few initiatives which are taken at the retail level. But some of the successful ones, they're in the initial stages. I can share with you. Abhishek Raniwala of Jaipur has tied up with Manish Malhotra, and he is selling designer wear as well as designer jewelry. Then there is Raj Mahtani has tied up with Ritu Kumar. Sabyasachi had initially tied up with Kishan Das, but now he is doing both. So you have two fantastic verticals, Taneira, which I loosely defined as fashion, and Tanishq. So do you see there is a scope of collaborative retail? Maybe you can add even Nebula watches, and it could be a new format. So have you thought about such an eventuality going forward?
So this is a very popular question. When we launched Taneira, everybody asked, oh, so it's going to be sold through Tanishq stores, is it? Separate floor or some? So it was almost people were expecting it, average public and media, or even investors and many other people. So we said, no, it requires its own space, because you need to do justice for the entire product. See, finally, we need to ensure that in a given retail space, you do justice to a category. Return per square foot is very important. And also the jewelry product is relatively small. The sari product is big. So how the two can come together in a given retail space, we have not yet been able to imagine. And we said, maybe there is still time for that. I know in the South, many players have stores adjoining each other. I think Kumaran and Silks have got something, and so on. And Chennai Silks has also done something. So PSR, there are many players. Whether it can come together next to each other or within the same outlet on different levels, it's a question which we haven't yet answered. Okay, to be very honest, we can collaborate on many fronts. I think we are both catering to the same customer. Even in Taneira, when we started, since I was part of incubating it, we said our customer group, very easy, the Tanishq customer, very straightforward. If we can get to Tanishq customers, we have a business plan for the next 5 years well taken care of. Or even a Raga customer, it's the same customer more or less. Second collaboration is, between our stores, when we launched, we saw that customer we can refer, vice versa. Somebody is coming for a wedding or an engagement, they may buy jewelry first or they may buy sari. But we can co-locate or we can locate next to each other and share that information with each other. Of course, with the customer's permission, or escort the customer to the other store. So through our Encircle program, we have a customer loyalty program there. The third level is we could look at design collaboration. So in a particular year, the same inspiration can be used to design a product collection for jewelry, and it can reflect itself in a sari collection as well, or in a ethnic wear dress collection. That is something which we have not yet started, but it is very much there. And with a common design head, we will integrate that sooner or later. The fourth level of integration is at the level of the occasion. So I think, and maybe towards the end, if we have time, I'll play that one. I think the emotion of, I think weddings are a very, very big space, Anil. I think every jeweler in India knows that 50-60% of their business happens thanks to wedding. For Tanishq, it's still very small. We are only about maybe around 25% of our, business comes out of wedding jewelry. So we're still building our credentials in that space. But I think the emotion of wedding, the occasion of wedding, and being able to show products which are from both our verticals is a real possibility. if we also have the same design theme being launched around the same time, there's an opportunity to actually work closely together. How the retail spaces come together is there's a lot of how to say constraints. Find the space which is big enough for both. I need to have frontage for both. What goes on top, what goes down. So there are many, and we can't mix and match. But in our wedding trousseau, for example, when in our wedding zones in Tanishq stores, we have started keeping mannequins with saris and multiple saris so that you can try on different colors and see which set goes well. And they are now all Taneira saris. So similarly, when we do our wedding zone in Taneira stores, I'm sure there's an opportunity to do a Tanishq trousseau along with it. And therefore we can kind of complement each other. But I think the emotion of wedding, the specialness of weddings, the celebration of relationships during weddings is something which I think is very good. And if we have the time, I will leave it to you. We can play 30-40 seconds of a particular clip on what I mean by the emotion of wedding. And I'm sure we will all connect with it, you know. Although it's in Marathi, the first part, we'll see only that. Jayan bhai, if you can play that Riva first, just 40 seconds or till the first two sections are done. Maybe Marathi and Bengali. Yeah.
काल रात्री तुझी आई खूप रडत होती तेव्हा मी तिला समजावलं अरे पुण्यात मुंबईला तर चालली आहे यात रडण्यासारखं काय आहे
कैसे कहूँ मैं समझ ना आए प्यार दिया बदला
एक्चुअली ছেলে তো আমারও চয়েসের কিন্তু তাও আজকে জেলাস ফিল করছি
उतना ही ये कम लगता है जितना कहते जाए क्या क्या कहना था और देखो क्या क्या ना कह पाए
सब काम छड़ू खाना का
ਬਾਹਰ ਇੰਨਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਪਿਆ ਪਰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੈਠਣ ਦਾ ਮਨ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ
We can stop it, Jayan bhai. Thanks. I think the emotions are universal. If you think about it, the millennial bride and the senior father, you know, and the relationship is perennial. And if you could see in those frames, and if I see it from the eyes of a Taneira and a Tanishq, I can see opportunities for both to come together beautifully, especially if they have been even thought about from a design stage. So you're right. If the occasion is such that I can dress up the bride and I can also connect with that same emotion for the same kind of value system that we are trying to build, you know, with the customer, I think there's a tremendous opportunity. The retail side, if it comes together, fine. If it doesn't come together, no problem. As long as the customer, because customers come to buy experiences, yes, but my view is first and foremost, the customer is coming to buy a product. We have to serve that customer's product need, honestly. After that, the emotion and the experience of the selling process is the packaging. You know, it's what will leave that impression for you. So yes and no, there's opportunities. I see a lot of opportunity. The challenge will be, how do we get two different divisions, although they are same company, to work closely together seamlessly to deliver this will require a lot of integration, design, product, marketing, communication, and retail. It's interesting. Let's see if it comes up. It's a dream. I love the idea that you have thrown up. Who knows? Opportunity rakh sakte hain.
Thank you. So my second last question of the day. It has been a very engaging discussion. I hope most of the audience agree with me, but I am really loving it. So my second last question of the day is, if you see in the last decade, there is a lot of technological developments happening, and big data analytics has assumed a lot of importance. I'm sure with your network of retail stores, Tanishq must have generated humongous amount of data. You must be slicing it, dicing it.
Yeah.
While data analytics has its advantages, it gives you a picture. You know what is happening, what customers are buying, but it doesn't tell you why customers are buying it. So I very recently read an interesting book by Martin Lindstrom called Small Data. He says it is very important to get into a consumer's mind. And it is not easy because 85%, as consumers, 85% of our actions are irrational. So how do you go about doing data analysis as well as getting into the mind of the consumer and making it work for you? Over to you.
Yeah, I think very valid points. We have been good at the second part, if I may say, in terms of we do a lot of qualitative research with customers, and there's a moderator who's talking to them, and we expose them to stimuli. We've also done neuro research in other, I don't know, in jewelry we've not done. We've done it in watches and even in perfumes when I was there. We have also done, in my mind, one of the most practical things, to do for any owner, jeweler, or any category is to go and stand and observe how the customer is buying. What is the discussion going on between the people who are together to come as a group to buy? How is she trying? In every retail experience, there is a transformative moment. If I say when you try a piece of jewelry, let me say the sari example. We had a very expensive sari from Banaras with a tanchoy. Tanchoy is a form of weaving technique. It's a resham on resham weaving technique. It's beautiful. Doesn't have zari, but it gives a very regal look. So we had a very expensive one, which was very complex weave at 80,000 rupees. And the customer, she was trying out various things. And when she tried that sari on, after she looked at herself in the mirror and she tried, she felt like a princess. She felt like a queen. She looked at it, she looked at all of us, and we could see it on her face. Of course, it helped that her husband didn't bother about the price. And he said, she didn't feel like removing the sari. She felt, this is who I am. I am the queen whom I was always there. Now this has brought out that inner queen in me. Similarly, I've seen transformative experiences when the woman wears that necklace. She's come to the store. She's come with her, and when she wears it, and if she's wearing it with that particular outfit, I think something changes in her mind. So there is a transformative moment that happens at retail. And I think even without getting into complex analysis, you can figure out what are the things that matter. And I think many of our jewelers who are family jewelers have done it fabulously. They know how to play to the customer. The other side, which is about hard data, I think that's where small businesses have not leveraged the power. Even Tanishq and Titan, we have now 12 million customers active who buy from us. In jewelry itself, we have at least 4 or 5 million customers. We do a lot of analysis to see over the 5-6 years, how has the journey of this customer been? At what price point she came? How did she upgrade over time? And therefore, if you want to have a customer who buys a 5 lakh product, maybe 3 or 4 years later, today she may come into the store and buy only a 25,000 rupee product. So it is important that you treat this 25,000 rupee product customer as importantly as that 5 lakh, because she is 3 years later, she's going to be your 5 lakh, 10 lakh customer. So this has come out through data because no one person would have known this information. And when we test it across all stores, because a customer may have bought it from somewhere in Bangalore, bought somewhere else in Bombay, etc. The same customer moves around a lot because today is transferable jobs, etc. So I think what data has brought to us is information about how the customer is shopping. Data will not tell you whether this is what will dramatically alter the customer. Data will point out. When we look at net promoter scores, we measure customer experience through net promoter scores. And we then dissect the net promoter scores by price bands or by plain and studded or by geographic location. It throws up a pattern. From there, you can draw a hypothesis, and then go and check it out. whether that is true. The other way around also works. When I visit a store or when we do some research, we get a lot of hypothesis, qualitative. Then we go back and look at data and get it validated through. So to me, the pattern and hypothesis can come from anywhere, but then you go and validate it this way or that way. That's the way, at least I see how we can proceed ahead. There is a benefit of intuition and observation, and there's a benefit of analysis. And I think big data and small data, as you rightly pointed out, can come seamlessly together. It takes effort because you have different kind of people who are good at one thing and different kind of people who are good at another thing. And integrating them is the challenge because they're very different mindsets. So a leader or a good marketing head has to marry the two and to be able to see how to use the power of both. It is a challenge, but I think that's the way we will go, especially with more online data, more big data, more customer loyalty data. Data is going to come out of our ears and we will all become completely numb to the data. So analyzing it and getting some insights is very, very important.
So coming to the last part of the session, the one positive outcome of this pandemic is the fact that people are discovering their purpose in life at an individual level, at an organization level, because we don't know what is going to happen. What is this wealth? What are we going to do with this wealth if we don't know how long we are going to live? So when we talk about the Tata Group, philanthropy is a way of life for the Tata Group. If we go back 2 centuries, in fact, Jamshedji Tata was the first person to establish a charitable trust. Rockefeller and Ford Foundation were established much later. So philanthropy is not something new to Tata Group. And in fact, if I remember correctly, Tata Group was one of the first groups to announce an aid of 1,500 crores. So having said that, I read a very interesting and very thought-provoking quote from Tom Peters, and it says, "No tombstone in the world has ever featured the amount of money earned by the person lying under." So what is your take on this, Ajoyji?
So I think the Tata Group is a very, recently I was sharing in another, yesterday, in fact, there was a Kolkata Management Association lecture and I said, I think COVID has brought out challenges for a leader to build resilience and depth. And here I quoted G.R.D. Tata, who talked about the true sign of a leader is the one who is able to lead with affection, lead with affection. These are 3 words, but it can take a lifetime to kind of live up to that legacy. Let me give you my own view on lead with affection, or the way I'm looking at what COVID, and this is a personal view. It is not a Tanishq point of view. It is not a Titan. It's not a Tata. It is what me as an individual have felt. I think this is a very surreal time. The world has been brought to a halt. It's a once in a century kind of event. So we cannot ignore it. I also don't think it is a mere accident. I believe nature is trying to teach us humans a lesson. It is trying to teach me certainly a lesson, and I think humanity a lesson. The lesson is about balance. Only people are not humans are not the only important species for the planet. In fact, I personally subscribe to the belief that humans are perhaps the virus on this planet, because everything we touch, if you have read Sapiens from Yuval Noah Harari, or if you've read some of the other work, wherever humans have gone from 50,000 years back, after a few decades and centuries, we have altered the ecosystem completely. So nature is trying to tell the planet may not be able to survive if we continue the model we are operating as human beings, the so-called global economic model, which is, mixed with capitalism, economics, democracy, individualism, all that Dr. Harari talks about. This, in my mind, this model is at cross purposes with the health of the planet. And just as a demo, the nature has shown us in the last 5-6 weeks, if you just stop human activity, just halt, pause, the planet starts healing itself from pollution to animals to natural. I think if we as humanity, we are at a crossroad, we have to decide, are we going to live in harmony with the planet, or are we going to just chase our desires and needs and what I would call as mindless consumerism? Yeah. We will have to alter something. Humanity has a choice. Today, you can choose to go this way or that way. Nature will decide accordingly who and how needs to survive. Nature and the planet is far greater consciousness than we are individually. The second big thing this is teaching me is nature is also saying that you cannot solve this problem by yourself. It is forcing it, the world has to get together to solve the problem. Whether we will learn from it or we will become more divisive or blame each other or fight with each other or become more protectionist, that is up to us. The only way to do this is in a collaborative manner. So if we don't learn to collaborate and cooperate, if I can't think win-win in my ecosystem, if I can't think win-win in my organization, if I can't think win-win as between countries, I think we are destined for a very difficult time going forward. The third thing I have picked up out of this is we need, we need time to reflect. This is a pause button. When you reflect, you're able to absorb these things. If you observe when we are sitting at home, how difficult, housework is relentless. We should start recognizing and appreciating the work that our mothers or our wives have done. And many of our women are also managing work and home. How difficult is it? It's difficult. I found last 5-6 weeks, I've been cooking one meal in the house, cleaning some stuff and managing work from home, which is full time. It is relentless. So my appreciation and respect for women has gone deeper, and especially all the house help who do all the work for us. Many Indians are used to house help. So I think it is a time to appreciate and recognize that we are a privileged class. Quarantine, isolation, work from home, these are privileges which we have. Everybody doesn't have that. So instead of getting anxious, we should be grateful that we have so much. Instead of being anxious about our personal problems, whether our business will survive, whether our cash flow will survive, how will my saving go up, my share market has gone down. We can think of 20 different anxieties we have. But what is more important is, I have an opportunity to give and help somebody else. Nature will give it back to you 10 times over. 10 guna, uska ROI 1000% hai, sir. But we operate in our own anxiety. And our anxiety is what creates our reality. So here's an opportunity for us to think great gratitude for what I have, privilege for what I have, and what can I do for others rather than how do I protect my own backside or my own interest. These are 4 or 5 things which nature is trying to teach me, and I'm trying to reflect on this at this point in time, even though we are very busy. And I'm sorry I've unleashed a personal philosophy on many of you unsuspecting souls. So if you resonate with it, fine. If you don't, ignore it. All of us have different ways to look at it, and we are all bungling our way through. We are like the 20 blind men trying to look at a dinosaur, the 6 blind men and the elephant. This is the reality of. So I'm sharing my perspective. I'm sure I'll learn from your perspective as well.
Yeah.
So this is my personal take, Anil.
Yeah.
Not a Tata Group take, but a lot of Tata values sitting in that, I suppose.
So that is what the fireside chat is all about. And I for one, totally agree with what you have said. And if I have to summarize what you have said in one sentence, which is from Thomas Friedman, he says, don't mess with nature. The survival of the fittest and how you will survive and thrive in future will depend on how fast you are able to adapt to the changed realities. So thank you very much. It was a great pleasure, and we look forward to engaging with you sometime in future. All the very best to you.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you for all of you for a patient hearing. And it's been a long session, but I've enjoyed all the questions. And thank you, Jayan Bhai, for being the person in the background, making things happen with I couldn't manage it with my technology skills, and Jayan bhai played all those ads. You've been an absolute wonder. And Anilji, your questions have made me think. And everybody, some wonderful comments. Sorry if I've not been able to answer many of your questions. Maybe some other time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
God bless and be safe.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. You have been a lovely audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.